really interesting topics this morning on the headlines. And when we get in, you will see what I'm talking about. I have with me Okenan Nebedum, a lawyer and a public affairs analyst. I also have another public affairs analyst, Ambrose Igboke. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
And Okena is dressed like a Mazi this morning.
It will disclose to us where it's going after
exactly where. All right, let's begin with the headlines now. Let's see what all these papers are saying. We'll start with the Punch newspaper. Punch is saying on Senate presidency, PDP warns APC Ndume tackles Oshomole. It's all about the National Assembly this time on most of the papers this morning. That's what the Punch is saying. Let's move to the next one, Blueprint. Blueprint this morning is saying certain decisions of 8 Senate regrettable. That Buhari is saying that. Certain decisions of 8 in the Senate regrettable. Okay, from the Blueprint, let's move to the Vanguard now. The Vanguard newspaper, war over National Assembly leadership as Ndume PDP blast Oshomole. And there are some multiple riders there to explain more. Choice of Lawan by Gbajabiamila is shocking, unconstitutional, says Ali Ndume. And Lawan by Gbajabiamila chosen because they were never in PDP. Source says that. All right, an election of presiding officers open to all parties. The PDP is saying this. And don't be like last National Assembly. Buhari counsels new leadership of the National Assembly. Okay. That's what the Vanguard is reporting this morning. From the Vanguard, let's move on now to The Guardian. The Guardian is our next paper, saying that cracks emerge in APC Senate presidency bid. And there are some multiple riders there to explain as well. PDP vows to field candidates for National Assembly posts. Leaves Saraki out of leadership tussle. Caucus warns senators. And CSO cautions Buhari over alleged plot to hijack legislature. And Namdas, Onyejocha, and Okafor join race for rep speakers, okay? For rep speaker, rather. All right, from The Guardian, let's move to the Daily Sun. Daily Sun is saying 9th Senate presidency, consensus splits APC, and senators-elect kick over party's adoption of sole candidate. I wouldn't step down, vows Ndume. And outsiders can't impose our leaders. PDP is quoted to say that on the Daily Sun. From Daily Sun, let's move to This Day. This Day is saying trouble looms as Ndume opposes Lawan's adoption as Senate president. And there are some multiple riders to explain that as well. APC threatens disciplinary action against former Senate leader. And PDP caucus leaves Saraki out of your jostle, says National Assembly leadership open to all legislators. Okay, that's This Day. From This Day, let's move now to The Nation. The Nation is reporting, saying that Buhari APC chiefs endorse Lawan for Senate president. Adamu is Senate leader favorite. Okay, that's what The Nation is reporting. Let's move now to Business Day. Business Day is the next paper this morning and the last one for the morning. CBN surprise rate cut questions the federal government's broader reform goals. Okay, and 50 barrels per day or 50 BPS move aimed at boosting growth. All right, that's what Business Day is reporting this morning. All right, gentlemen, let's move to some of the stories that may interest you this morning from developments yesterday. We'll start with the Punch. If you open Punch, page 12, it's saying on building collapse, Buhari reads the Riot Act to offenders, and he's saying that those who contravene building regulations will be punished. He made that statement yesterday, and one would say that this is coming even a little too late. Okay, now I'd like to start with you on this.
Ordinarily, the building collapse and its victims are covered under the law of torts by vicarious liability, and under vicarious liability, it can be traced to violation of some building standards, which has been on the forefront of the discussions recently. Our problem in this country has never been laws. It is the willpower to implement those laws, and then the willpower to stand and see some of your colleagues, friends, allies, or caucus or political associates punished on account of violation of the law.
It seems that's the will and that's the power that the president is bringing on board right now with this warning yesterday.
It's very good too, but to empower institutions to do their job without political interference.
Okay, Ambrose, the Lagos State has also set up a committee with all of the estate surveyors, town planners, experts, LASEMA. They're all looking into this building collapse issue. What do you think will change?
Well, fortunately, I'm involved somehow with stakeholders in the real estate sector for a time. And we remember the last gas explosion that took place last year at Magodo area. The government at all levels, they're used to setting up committees, fire brigade approach when things happen. We don't plan very well. And when things happen, we make media shows of it. We talk tough, like the president did. We set up committees. But after a while, Nigerians are having always amnesia about these things, and then it fizzles out, and we continue our life as usual, and then we wait for another round.
But what is really that challenge
the challenge is
in implementing, in executing?
There's no challenge. It's just that some people just refuse to do their work. And again, the body language of the leaders. Like when Babatunde Raji Fashola was governor of Lagos State, the body language was is about discipline. It's about doing something. I remember some chieftains of the AD then, AC, that he came under. Their houses were demolished in different parts of the state to create way for that were sitting on water channels. And he didn't look at anybody's, utterance or what. He just went ahead and did it. Now, most of those buildings that collapsed in the Lagos Island were already marked for, they were distressed building, already marked for demolition.
Some 1 year, some 2 years ago.
Some 10 years. And then the people, what do? The officials will know what goes around. They come, instead of executing the demolition or that, some people go behind, do some funny things, and then leave it, and let's say, okay, please now, leave them. All those kind of emotional sentiments and the rest. And we are losing lives. That underscores the value of life in Nigeria. We don't have value for our life. What is the value of the average Nigerian? The value of life of an average Nigerian? If we are serious about people, we should be preventive and not reactive. Okay,
another story that will interest us this morning is on the blueprint. It says police, most corrupt institution in Nigeria. SERAP is bringing out this report. And now there was a report at the time that also put, I think that was 2 years ago, that also put police as one of the most corrupt institutions in Nigeria. And if this report comes, if this is something we should adopt, I wonder what the concerns are.
I think it is even getting worse. The percentage this time was about 66.6. In the survey they conducted around the country in the 6 geopolitical zones, I read that it's about 2,655 or so. In that number, over 820 voted police as the most corrupt. And I can tell you that, yes, it reflects the situation, but there is also more to it. The civil servants themselves should be coming second. But the way, way I would rather want to react to it is that for government, this is a clarion call. All right. You now have a job to do.
Ambrose, just in less than 5 seconds, is the police helpless when these reports come and then the echelon, the leadership of the police see these reports?
In 2015, Amnesty International brought out a report which was titled Welcome to Hell, where they listed a lot of atrocities, including corruption, that the Nigerian police and armed forces commit. Police may not be the most corrupt government agency in Nigeria, but because among the people, those are the people that have more interactions with them.
Engagement with the police on daily basis.
If you go to the civil service or NNPC and some of those people, because the people, normal people, do not have daily interactions with them. So I think police is the worst.
That's another window that we have to look at. It's really interesting. Thank you very much, Ambrose Igboke, for coming on the program, and Okina Nebedum, thank you very much for coming. Right.
Listeners, now it's time for a review of stories making the headlines in the papers, and with me in the studio are 2 gentlemen, Okina Nebedum, a lawyer and public affairs analyst. I also have another public affairs analyst, Ambrose Igboke. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on TVC Breakfast.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's head straight to the papers now, and we'll start with the Punch. Senate presidency, PDP wants APC, Ndume tackles Oshomole. And then we head to the blueprint. The major headline here says Buhari setting actions, decisions of 8th Senate regrettable. And then we move to the Vanguard. War over NAS leadership as Ndume blasts Oshomole. Choice of Lawan Gbajabiamila shocking, unconstitutional, says Ali Ndume. Lawan Gbajabiamila chosen because they were never in PDP. Election of presiding officers open to all parties. PDP. Don't be like last NAS. Buhari cancels new leadership. And then we head to The Guardian. Cracks emerge in APC Senate presidency bid. PDP vows to field candidates for National Assembly posts. Leaves Saraki out of leadership tussle. Caucus warns senators. CS cautions Buhari over alleged plot to hijack legislature. Namdas Onyejocha Okafor join race for reps speaker. And then we head to The Daily Sun. 9th Senate presidency consensus splits APC. Senators-elect kick over party's adoption of sole candidate. I won't step down, vows Ndume. Outsiders can't impose our leaders, PDP. And then we go to the blueprint. We have Buhari setting actions, decisions of 8th Senate regrettable. We'll go to this date now. Trouble looms as Ndume opposes Lawan's adoption as Senate President. APC threatens disciplinary action against former Senate leader. PDP caucus leaves Saraki out of your jostle, says National Assembly leadership open to all legislators. And then we head to The Nation. Buhari APC chiefs endorse Lawan for Senate President. Adamu is Senate leader favorite. Business Day, we have here CBN surprise rate cuts questions FG's broader reform goals. 50 BP's move aimed at boosting growth. All right, gentlemen, those were the headlines, and we head to the papers, to some of the stories that might interest you this morning. And we have, let's look at The Guardian. We have a story here that says federal government blames importers for failure in promoting locally made goods. Panel cautions Finance Ministry on poor budget implementation. Well, the federal government is blaming importers for the challenge in its drive to promote the patronage of locally made goods, and the Minister of Agriculture, that's Audugbe, was saying this yesterday. I'll start with you, Ambrose. Promoting locally made goods. You know, we have the issue of grow Nigeria, buy Nigeria, grow the Naira, and all of that. We've had cases like that. But then, would you really say that importers are really the issue here when it comes to promoting locally made goods?
No, not at all. I think the Minister for Agriculture is living in, is not living in real times with the situation on ground. Importers do not have local alternatives. That's why they go to import. I remember some few years ago, before the government of Olusegun Obasanjo brought in the issue of banning some beverages. Most of the canned drinks were being imported to this country then. But after the ban, the policy changed, and we had a lot of the international beverages now localized. They sought partnerships with local bottling companies, with local breweries and the rest. And today, Nigeria, we are producing canned drinks here. Now, when you talk of agriculture, the Nigerian population is so huge that we have a lot of food deficit, especially the grains. Our strategic grain reserves, where are they? We don't even have enough grains to feed Nigeria. Even the rice, even the strides made in the rice farming and the rest, is not enough to feed this country. So when you create the conducive atmosphere, when you create the right environment, when you subsidize farming, because even in America, in China, and in Europe, farming is being heavily subsidized by their government so that they can compete favorably in the international market. It's not being done here. So what incentive are we giving to farmers? When we have enough alternatives locally.
Incentives for farmers? They
cannot compete.
By the CBN.
They cannot even compete enough to feed Nigeria, talk less of exporting. So there's a lot of deficit. There's a deficit gap in the demand and supply of agricultural products. Because of that, they import to meet up that deficit. If we have local alternatives and it's cheap enough, naturally, people will not go to import.
Cheap enough. Well, let's hear Okenna here out, because he's been smiling all the while we are speaking.
No, I totally disagree with the minister. The minister has got his priorities mismatched. With a country like Nigeria, one of the best climates, one of the best soils, one of the best arable lands in terms of livestock, one of the best in terms of crop production, different kinds of cash crops can grow in this country. I think he overshot himself by making that statement. If people don't get alternatives to the kind of goods and commodities that is available, that is when they import. But by the time you also import, you take to the negotiation table during bilateral agreements what would bring your GDP up by in the value chain of a production of a certain goods. You can take over the content element. For example, what are the contents of producing a particular fruit drink? Then you say you can produce, for example, you can source it locally to produce citrus, or to produce orange, or to produce mango, or to produce whatever, to grow it here. You remember what happened in Kwara State when in
but we are looking
Zimbabwe.
at, yes, go ahead. We are looking
Zimbabwe,
at diversifying the economy, and we were
very
looking
well.
at agriculture as well.
Is it. Agriculture is it. It can even feed Nigeria beyond oil. So Nigeria benefited from what happened in Zimbabwe because they came here, they were given lands, and part of what they were growing, they grew to the specification of the manufacturer. So by the time you are growing the produce in the farm, it's already half paid for. They are off-takers for that farm even well before harvest. And this is the kind of value chain you create. Before you know it, in 5,
are we
10
creating
years,
that environment for businesses to thrive, such as this that you have mentioned?
That is what the government should take cue into getting beyond what the CBN does in rolling out money and all those. They should be able to negotiate during the bilateral or trade investment shows and all that, negotiate such that in the value chain, your farmers would have input in whatever value chain of the end product, so that our GDP will be restored to us. We don't just export. By the time you import more, you don't really do a capital flight.
Well, you know that they have talked about, banning certain goods like even rice, the importation of rice and some other goods to,
Banning has never helped
ensure
us.
that local farmers can, meet up with all of this. Instead of importing, we can meet up with the demands. But you have said that, all of this is not seeming to work.
I eat local rice in my house. Sometimes
And
I drive around
how
Lagos to
expensive
look
it
for
can
local.
be.
I even drive, it's not even available. There was one they were selling sometime in Secretariat of the Laos. I go there in their farmhouse, I can't find them. So it's not even available. So the number of Nigerians, we're almost 200 million. The farmers cannot meet up. And Nigeria is paying lip service to agriculture. I remember, yes, there are some crops, for example, sugar cane. Our sugar factories in Bashita, the sugar factories in Lafiaji and some other places in Numan and other places are gone. And sugar has no waste products, because the waste products of sugar or sugar cane is being used for, as molasses being used for alcohol. The back of it is being used for paper. That's how paper Jebami came up, and that is how Niamco Bashita came up. Now we allow those industries to die, and then we are importing sugar. The same thing when it goes to rice. All the Fadama farms we had and all that kind of thing cannot even feed a section of the country. We cannot even feed Lagos.
So how do we move from here? We know all of this.
What we move from here is to stop this blame game the Minister for Agriculture is talking about. By now, we should think that the minister should build on what Mr. Additional left behind as Minister for Agriculture. Additional took us to a level. He cut off the supply chain of the middlemen in the fertilizer thing by this giving the farmers the phone to have direct access to the Ministry of Agriculture, and they're able to be getting that fertilizer straight. That improved. So on this issue of, we have grown sufficiently in rice, is the work of Additional did some 5 years ago. Therefore, this minister should build on that. But this minister is an analog minister, I'm sorry to say. He cannot even build on what Additional has left behind. So he starts a blame game. And once you start this kind of blame game, blaming importers, how can you blame importers? And you cannot ban, because when you ban, you create more deficit, and you increase the price of those goods and make Nigerians go hungry.
All right, gentlemen. Okay, now, Sari, can I come to you because we have to wrap it up here now. Thank you for your contribution so far, Ambrose and Okena. Well, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we're streaming live on YouTube. You can connect with us on Twitter using the hashtag TVC Breakfast. Still to come on the show.